This time here in Yerushalmi Pesachim, the article Oz V'Addition, we're on Daf Nun Tesem now, the fourth line down, and that is Al Daita Remeir, and in the Vilna it is on Daf Nun on the base, the sixth line down, Al Daita Remeir. Now Remeir said yesterday that Tzibur Chetzi Torah and Chetzi Tmei. The Tzibur is half Torah and half Tomei. HaTorah Mosi Misar Rishon, the Torah make Pesach Rishon, but Tmei Mesheni. Tmei make Pesach Sheni. Divrei Remeir. Now, so the Gemara asks a very Shas question here, which is, all the Shas question is Mechza Karov and Mechza Commute. And we have this question by parts made by Erev, what's the status of parts made? And we have a question by Shchita V'Shechlet, half of a simon, what's its status? And this is a question which comes up a lot of things. So, here too, when I was asking, let's examine this Remeir. What's Remeir saying? What's the status of the Mechza? Is it Karov or Commute? Now, if we're going to be rove, both will be rove. Going to be mute, both are going to be mute. And that's the premise of this question. And most of the Farshim change the gears in some way, shape, or form. Many different versions are suggested. We're going to go with the Yerushalmi Pesachim, which is similar to Pnei Moshe Pshat, although not necessarily the same thing in the way he changes it. And the article is similar as well to what we're about to say. And the first changes we make. Later on, we're going to deviate, but the first changes, it's like the article does them as well. So, Al Daita Remeir, Hein Mechza, might overlay. What do you make it? Kruba Kamid. If we're going to say it's a majority minority. And the first change we're going to make is, instead of Intema Kurov, we're going to say it's commute. Okay, so it's going to say it's commute. So now, each one is mute, right? The Torah are mute and the Tmeim are mute. So the Tmeim making Pesach Sheni, that makes sense because they're minority and they're Nidchei Pesach Sheni. But the Torah making Pesach Rishon doesn't make sense because the article points out there, I think it's from Reb Chaim, that it's probably the Bnei Moshe too, although I didn't look at the Bnei Moshe to be honest with you, but it's got to be there. But in any event, there are they're like Yechidim, because they're minority. And Yechidim can't make Pesach Rishon. Right? It's only the rove of the coach should be able to make Pesach Rishon. So that says, in Temer Commute, HaTorah Me'eino Simas Rishon. The Torah should make the Rishon. To make Sheni, because the minority is Nidche. But the Torah shouldn't be able to make the Rishon. Conversely, in Temer Karov, okay, so now, let's flip it the other way. Right, Tamer Karov, so both of them are over the Torah and the Tmeim, right? So then I understand the Torah can make Pesach Rishon. That's legit, right? Because they're the majority. It's Am Yisrael, they make Pesach Rishon. But at Tmeim, ain't no sin Sheni. The Tmeim should be able to make Pesach Sheni, because Rov Tzibur is not Nidchet the Pesach Sheni. Only minority of the Tzibur. So how can they, we should say too much of a Tzibur for them. But okay, but in any event, we don't. There's certainly not Nidchet the Pesach Sheni. Can't do Pesach Sheni. It's their majority. The rove is not nidchet the Pesach Sheni. Sorry, I repeated myself there. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yosef, take out a word in the next line like Karmnei does. Rabbi Yosef, Lo Amar Rov Tahorim Osim Esrishon. Take the word Einon. Rov Tmeim Einon Osim Esrisheni. So let's see the Karmnei on this. Lo Amar Rov Tahorim Osim Esrishon. Lo Amar Batorah. It doesn't say in the Torah the dafka kshatorah rov yasus rishon. It doesn't say only if the Torah are rov they can do Pesach Rishon. Betara doesn't say that. V'gam lo ne'emar the dafka rov tmeim yasus rishon betuma. It doesn't say the majority. You need a majority tmeim to do the Rishon betuma. Doesn't say that. The Gemara says the Torah says lo amar ela rov tmeim lo yidochu lePesach Sheni. All it says is rov tmeim are not nidche Pesach Sheni. Okay, let's see, that rov tmeim lo nidche Pesach Sheni. The midrasiv ish nidche ve'ein tzibur nidchim says that ish is pushed over not tzibur. Yofina the rov ein nidchim. That we learn rov ein nidchim. Came to ain't a rov, because they're not a majority. Oser Sheni, right? They could make Pesach Sheni. Ulolam mechza mechzenik rov. So mechza is not a krov, it's a minority, but it doesn't. There's no prohibition on the Kedarim doing Pesach Rishon if they're not a rov. The only prohibition is that you can't be doiche a rov tzibur to Pesach Sheni. But since mechza ain't a karov, it's like a meal. So therefore, for the minority, so to speak, quotation mark of the mechza Torah to Pesach Rishon, and the minority, so to speak, which is commute of the Tmeim, they make Pesach Sheni, and everything works out fine and dandy. Okay, so next more the some of the Farshim, including the arts, go change it from Aldaite de Rabbi Yehuda to Aldaite de. Now, the reason they make that change has to do with the change yesterday, which in the Brisa, and they which we did not make. So we don't have to change it. So Rabbi Yehuda will tell you about it. Is Rabbi Yehuda in without changing it. It's all means the same thing. It's just a question of whose name is where. But we're talking about the Rabbi Yehuda who said by lechem upon him and shtei lechem ein korban tzibur choluk. So he says you don't divide in half, and that was identified as the same shita as the Amrulo in that Bryce from yesterday, which said ein apesa bo chatzoin. So, okay, so you hold Ein HaPesach Bo Chatzoin, because Ein Korban Tzibur Choluk, which is the Amrulo and the Rabbi Yehuda. So that Rabbi Yehuda, Hayin Mechza Mechza, over there, you can't do half-half. So what do? Right? So you can't do half preservation, half Pesach Sheni. So Rabbi Ba, Mishem Rav said, Mitami Echa B'Sheretz. Mitami, one person B'Sheretz, and now the majority are Tameh. Majority of Tumah, so Pesach comes with Tumah. Shmuel Marashan also Derech Choka. We send one of the Torah away at Derech Choka, so now also we have majority of Tumah. So you can order Pesach B'Tumah, Tumah B'Tzibur. Reb Chaim brings down from a Tosfos. He says, so why do we send away one of the Tmeim and let the Torah bake? That we have majority of Torah. The Torah make Pesach Rishon, and the Tmeim, or the minority, make Pesach Sheni. So he says we prefer to have the Achdus of having everybody do it together, and that we can do by sending away one of the Torah, and now the majority of Tmeim, everybody can do B'Tumah. So the opinion which holds that you Matami one person, as the commander Amar, the opinion holds that Yoch Machriel Tuma, that one person can be Machriel Tuma. Rather, Ena Yoch Machriel Tuma, but then it's Machlekes the Tosefta. The opinion shows one individual cannot be Machriel Tuma. He can't make the Tzibur considered Tameh. And Chaim brings down that it's learned out from the pasuk of Lo Tochal Yizbach Pesach Be'echad Sharecha, which literally means you can't sacrifice basically one of your gates. But wait, it's Darshan. I don't know where he's bringing it down from. Or he made it up himself, but he's saying that it's low, that you can't determine the Zvichas HaPesach based on one person. So therefore, you have to be two people, right? B'shach time, you have to send away two. Or you can send away two Torim in order to have a majority Tmeim. So the Gemara says, presumably also you can be Matami two people. I presume you have to Matami two people, Matami two people as well. It says about the Rav, who says that to make them Tomei to Masheretz is effective, is Rabbi Lezer. Now meaning that even though we can be Shorich and Zorich to Masheretz, so what does it mean Matami to Masheretz? So he's going like Rabbi Lezer, who said that there's a scenario, even though it's a very hypothetical scenario, I think, where if there's no water to Toivel, and therefore, in case no water to Toivel, you can't be Shoichet and Zorgan to Meisheretz because he can't become Torah. So, Rabbi Lezer asked, is a case where Tzibur touch Nevelos, touch Shvatzim never Oisim Betuma, even though you go to the mikvah, yes, ain't Shemaim Litvo. There's no word Toivel. There's Maim Litbo, you can't make Matuma, and of course, then being Matame, one or two people wouldn't work. You have to send away one or two of the Torah. So that only works in that remote scenario where there's no water to go to the mikvah. The Lord brings a very interesting halacha now. We're going to read according to the Korban Eda. I'm Rabbi Lezer. Haba betumas klishares, haba betumas yadayim, haba betumas sakinim, hu ba betuma. So these tumas are not the people are not Tamei Mace. The Klisharis are Tamei, the Adaim are Tamei, and the Sakinim are Tamei. So Korbaneda explains, Afilu Tamei Masim Yechulim. Even in this case, even Tamei Mace can eat. We didn't. Obviously, it's an interesting scenario. It's similar to that in water. Everybody is tumas yadayim, right? And or all the knives are tummy, right? Or all the klisharis are tummy to the Arab water. All the klisharis are tummy, all the yadayim are tummy, all the sakinim are tummy. So okay, in that case, afilu tmei mesu chlu mina. I might say, well, all these tumas are lighter tumas. Hay lebos metamin, but they're going to be metamin the basar. But the but the people are not going to be tamei, right? V'yasu turn so that people are tar do the Korban Pesach. V'yochla basar tamei lita basar betuma because the klishars are tamei, the yadayim are tamei, the sakinim are tamei, the tamei the basar. But that's a lighter prohibition, right? Shubulav the v'loychla betumas aguf. But the people who are tamei mace, who are tamei betumas aguf, they shouldn't be able to eat shubakaris because that's much more severe. So Kamash and the Kun Ochlin. So everyone's going to tell us that everybody eats. Even Tamei Mesim, and we don't distinguish. One's Tuma Hutra B'tzibur, even though it's on account of a Tuma Kala, which is only a lav, even those who are Tuma Chamura, which is the Tuma Saguf of Tamei Mes, they can eat as well. Okay, interesting scenario comes up next. Hatzibur Shlish Zavin, Shlish Tameim, Shlish Turim. So the Tzibur is 1/3 Zavim, and 1/3 Tamei Mes, and 1/3 Torim. What's the status? Raimana B'Shem B'Chizkiah said, Zavin the Tmeim Rabbi Torim. The Zavin and the Tmei Mace are become the majority over the Torim, and Vosim Betuma. They do Betuma. Yeah, but wait a minute, the Zavin can't eat. Later in the Masechta, we're going to see that Zavin are not allowed to eat even to Mahucha B'tzibur. So they're working. The fact that the Zavim makes it a tzibur, a majority, tummy, but the Zavin can't eat. As it says, Zavin Tmei Rama term v'hosim Betuma, but Zavin ain't an osin lo rishon lo sheni. The Zavin can't eat u'peis rishon because we don't say tu Mahucha B'tzibur for them, and and they're not considered. They're also not considered tmeim to be nidche b'peisach sheni. Why? So because only when tumah is not hutra b'tzibur and pesach rishon can we say that they're the tmeim are nidche pesach sheni. But here when tumah is hutra b'tzibur for the pesach rishon, we don't say that there is no Pesach Sheni. So therefore, those Zavin, they can't do Pesach Sheni. Okay. Amrei B'Zir said, Hazav also so kemumar b'horoya. Says the Korbaneda, the Zav is like a mumar b'horoya. What does it mean? Show based in Basu Mechza Tzibur PM. When the Tzibur, when the basin made a psak, and half of the Tzibur followed their psak, Echad also been amazing. One of them did deliberately shlopi based in. One of them did deliberately not a basin. Ain't no nibble chlai Yisrael lo losim below legishanim noisim. He's not considered part of Am Yisrael because he did it as a mumar. He went on his own, so he doesn't join with not considered part of those who can make up a majority for Palim Davar. And he's not considered to be part of the people who are not part of the majority for Palim Davar Shal Tzibur. So that's the Gemara says, doesn't go up, doesn't go down. It's not part of the, doesn't make a majority to make a Palim Davar, doesn't make a majority to not make a Palim Davar. He's commanded late to Dami. He's outside the Cheshbon. We have to make the Cheshbon out of him, and we'll have a whole question how to do what to do. The Mechza, we don't take him into account. So here too, we don't take the Zavim into account at all. They're not on the balance at all. So the third case remains in essence a half and half case like the cases which we had before. Okay, the goes on to a couple of cases. First one is kind of innocuous, and it goes to much more Chudashtika case. Nechabur Shidma Chamhem. You have Nechabur, one of them became tummy. You don't know which one. So, no choice. They'll have to do Pesach Sheni. Because you don't know which one became tummy, even though it was only one of them. One became tummy. Now, Tzibor, Sheni, it's Nidma Chamhem. Yeah, but Tzibor, when they became tummy, you don't know which one. Vein Yadua. Ezu. So we say, Yasu Batuma. So they're all Safek Tummy. So therefore, they do Pesach Rishon Batuma. Tan Rabbi Yosef said, Yasu B'Sfeikon. He says, yeah, but only the ones who are Sfeikos, right? Not the Badoim. So if you have, sure you have some people, Vadai Tummy. The Tumas Vadai was not Hutra B'Tzibur in this situation. So a fascinating thing. The Tumas Safek, that's Mutter B'Tzibur. So all the Sfeikos can do Pesach Rishon. But not the Tumas Vadai, but not those who are Vadai Tummy. That's fascinating. Chaim adds that also they have to use Kalim term because only term is Suffolk, so they can't use Kalim Tmeim. Okay, so the Gemara goes on to say that Lo Mistar B'Da the law, in other words, Lo Mistar B'Da Ela, it only makes sense they call it Rabbi Yoshua, like that Rabbi Yoshua said, Shelo Lano Shel Yochi Koris, that if one individual did join together and he was Vadei Tomei and he joined together those Sfeikim, this Supakim, the Pesach Rishon, he doesn't get a Koris. So so even though the Chatchila, as Meir Simcha says, even though Chatchila, the Vadoim shouldn't join in, but the Eved, if they did join in, so it's enough, the Pesach is enough Hutra B'Tzibur that you can't give them Koris. That's a Meir Simcha. The Kormeir and Reb Chaim seem to learn the opposite. They seem to learn that what it means is that if they did it, they are chayav. If an individual did do it, he is chayav koris. The exact opposite, Pshat the Gemara. The Gemara is sufficiently vague to go either way. So, I mean, either one way or the other way, the exact opposite. Either that when Rabbi Yosef says Yasub is fake, and he's saying to say, okay, that only the Sfeika should do it, and not the Vadoim, but the Vadai did do it. But the Ebed is not chayav koris, or Bakir. Only the Sfeikas can do it, and the Vadai is not actually allowed to do it. And if he did it, he is chayav koris. Okay, Rabbi Ibn B'Shem said Lo Roya Hilchu Achar Shivas Eretz Yisrael. For in terms of Harad, who's determines the tzibur, and that you bring, if the Rova Kol did, you go after the people who live in Eretz Yisrael. Tuma, for Tuma, you go after the majority of people who come into the Hazorah to do the Korban Pesach on Erev Pesach. All the Pesach is done b'shalosh kitos. So when I ask Ma, but Kol Kas Misharina, do we look at each Kas individually and determine whether it should be done b'tuma in that Kas or not? Or in Misharina, El B'Kas Misharina, we look at the first Kas and that determines what happens to the rest of the day. They set the precedent. No, we take account before they come in. Yeah, but not when they're in the Azar, before they come into the Azar. We count them as a totality of all the people who are there for today and intend to come in all those three kitos as one large group. Said, it says here the Re'iyah, but the Karmein changed it to Lo Ra. That's considered to be Eretz Yisrael in terms of Hara, from Lavo Chamos up to the north, Nachem Mitzrayim and to the south. The pasuk tells us this. Chuna says, "Time Rabbi Shimon Levi Bayash Shlomo Beisayi Asachag B'Choy Yisrael Imo," and the end of the pasuk says, "Kal Gadol Milavo Chamas and Nachem Mitzrayim." So that's considered to be the kahal, everybody who lives in those confines from north to south. Okay, that brings us to the end of the Amud, and we will stop here.